What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to another Dart Frog adventure. I'd like to thank you guys so much for coming back and watching another video. That means so much to me. You guys are awesome. With the holidays coming up and everything, it's been a little hard for Yumi and I to try to catch up to do another video. We're hoping to be able to do another video before Christmas. If not, my wife and I are still planning on doing the Christmas cruise. We'll probably do that video on the 24th. We'll be going live, so if you guys want to check that out, most definitely come back. We'll be live doing that on the 24th. Not sure exactly at what time right yet, but I'll get, once that gets closer, I'll give you guys a little bit more info on that and what we're planning to do with the live cruise and whatnot. To go check out the Christmas lights. But before I get into the story tonight, I'd like to tell you guys a little quick story before the main story. The main story is going to take place way up in the hills in southern Colorado at a place called Platoro, Colorado. So if you guys have been following my channel here recently, you'll know I've been doing like a new little segment type of thing, just telling some stories, some of my own personal stories that I've had. So this one, I think it was the poltergeist house I was talking about. This story takes place in another town, not too far from South Fork, in a town called Norte, Colorado. So like I was saying, in the poltergeist house, there's a difference between a house that has poltergeist activity and a house that has paranormal activity. Like I said, I'll get more into that in a different video. I might talk a little bit more about that when I do the rest of the story on the poltergeist house, or more of the story on the poltergeist house. Like I said, I have quite a few stories from that place. But this particular story is going to be in the house that I kind of sort of grew up in through my high school years in Del Norte. When we sold that house, another couple had bought that house, and then they ended up turning it into a business after we sold it and everything. So let me go ahead and tell you a little bit of the story about that house. Like I said, that's going to be a whole another story all on its own and everything. So, but anyhow, I'm going to tell you a quick little story before I get into the main story of the Platoro story. So it's the summer of 1994, 1995. I was a young teenager, and my parents had decided to go out to southern Colorado and look to see if they could buy a house. So they ended up finding this house in southern Colorado in a town called Del Norte, Colorado. So they went out there and they put some money on it, and they were talking to the realtor and all that stuff. So now, fast forward to the summer of 1996. My mom and I decided to go out to our brand new house, because for that following year from 95 to 96, nobody was living in the house. We weren't living in it, and we're like, well, why do we have this house in Colorado if we're not living in it? So my mom and I pack up a little bit of stuff, jump on a plane, fly out to Colorado. So we get to the house there in Del Norte, Colorado. And this house was really weird. There's two houses. There's the main house and our little guest house. But this place was zoned for both residential and commercial. So you could have like business there, or you could live there, or you could do both, have a business and live there. And so when my mom and I pull into this house of the summer of 1996, the last people that had lived there, they ended up turning the house over to the realtor in like 90, I want to say like 91 or 92 type of thing. So there was nobody living in this house for the better part of like 5 or 6 years until we moved in there. So the first day that my mom and I pull into this house, I just got this really bad feeling. So we get out of the car, walk up to the front door, and there's this big padlock on the front door. And my mom goes, okay, well, we're going to have to get a hold of the realtor and see what's going on. So we went like over to the realty office, and the realtor was like, yeah, he's like, we were having a problem with people like breaking in there and just, damaging the place and just doing some really dumb stuff type of stuff. And my mom's like, okay, thanks for putting the lock on there. So we get the key from the realtor and everything, and go back to our house, unlock the front door. And like I said, nobody's been living in this place for the part of like 5 or 6 years. So our front yard is just way overgrown. It looks like a jungle type of thing. and inside of our house is, it's starting to, there's weeds starting to come through some parts of the floor and everything. Like I said, I'll tell you more about this house. It's the paranormal house. I'll tell you more about this story later on. But the very first night that my mom and I had moved in there, I had barely walked in through the front door, and I had gotten this really just horrible feeling. I didn't like the place. It felt off to me. And so my mom and I moved in there, and we were getting everything set up and doing our thing, trying to figure out which rooms we wanted. So my mom took the biggest room upstairs, of course, which is, she's mom, so she can have the big room. But with her room, she had this big walk-in closet in her room, and so I took the bedroom downstairs because it's a nice one. It's just kind of away from everything downstairs. I had the bathroom right here. Like I said, I'll tell you more about this house later on in another story. But it's the first night that we're here in this house, and so we get everything set up. I got my little area all set up for like my bed and whatnot. I don't have a bed. I'm just laying on the floor, and my mom's doing the same thing. So it's late in the night, and all of a sudden I hear some crying. So I get up out of bed because I thought it was maybe my mom crying for some reason. So I go upstairs where my mom's at. My mom's sound asleep. So I wake my mom up. I'm like, Mom. And she's like, What? I was like, were you crying? She's like, no. I was like, you weren't crying in your sleep or anything. I was like, you weren't crying. She's like, no. She's like, go back to bed. She's like, I was sleeping. I'm like, okay. So I go back downstairs, crawl back in my little bed. Probably about 20 minutes later or so, I hear crying again. So I'm like, okay. She's sitting there kind of wondering what's going on and everything. So I'm just laying there. And maybe 5-10 minutes later, I hear crying again. It's like, okay, what's going on? So I go back upstairs, and this time my mom's awake. And I was like, tell me you heard that crying. She's like, I heard the crying. And she's like, at first I thought it was you. And then I realized it's coming from our walk-in closet. So there's this, like I was telling you, there's this big walk-in closet. So I sat in the room with my mom for a little while. And it's probably about maybe an hour or two that has passed. And we were getting ready to go back to sleep. At this point, I was like, well, I'll just crash out with my mom in her room until we get everything set up, type of thing. And so we're laying down, and all of a sudden, the crying happens again. So my mom and I are like, okay, this is really weird. So I get up and I go right over to the closet. I turn on the closet light. There is nothing in the closet except for a couple of personal items from the last renters. And that's where I'm going to leave you with this story. Like I said, the house with paranormal activity is a very, very strange house. And I have quite a few stories in that house for you. But anyhow, let's go ahead and start getting into the story of Platoro, Colorado. So in the late summer of 1998, probably like a month before my friend and I ended up going back to school, my friend's dad ends up purchasing this RV park up in Platoro, Colorado. Well, this RV park that my friend's dad purchased has a couple of small cabins, or access to a couple of cabins, the main cabin and a couple of small cabins. So my friend and I were like, okay, why don't we start planning a trip for next summer? Go up the patrol and go camping as much as we can up there next summer, since we have the option of a couple of cabins and whatnot to be able to use. So we're like, yeah, great plan. So we start talking with some of our friends throughout the rest of the 98 school year. So the summer of 1999 rolls around. Summer break hits. Probably about 3 weeks into our summer vacation, we finally get the chance to go up to patrol. So my friend's like, okay, let's go ahead and get all our supplies together, call a couple friends, and we'll head up to patrol. We'll go up there. We'll go camping for the weekend, maybe a week or something, type of thing. So we ended up spending the weekend up there. And that's all we were able to do. And so as we're getting everything together and getting our friends called and everything, we have to head up this canyon road. Now, this canyon road is the same canyon road that I was talking about in the last video I did. The Colorado Devil Monkey. So as we were heading up the canyon road, we saw that black shadow jump into the tree that was off on the side of the road. So we have to take this canyon road all the way up to the top of the mountain, circle kind of around the mountain to get back to where Platoro is at. And it's a drive, so you got to drive through the mountains. There's a couple ways to it, but the way that we took is the easiest way, because it basically, like where I lived in the paranormal house, this canyon road was just straight in front of my house. We had the Highway 160, and then there's another road that cut off like that and goes up to the top of the mountain. So my friends and I, we get all of our stuff together, and we're driving up that canyon road. And so finally, by the time that we get up to the top of the canyon, at the top of the mountain above tree line and everything, we're about almost halfway. And we have a couple of our friends with us. This actually happened to be the same friends that were with us on that canyon road the time that we saw that black figure jump into the tree and everything. So we're up top of the mountain, and there's this, I think it's a copper mine up there. I think it's still active to this day. I don't know, it might not be. I'm not sure. But anyhow, we have to go up past the mine. And so we're up past the mine, and like I said, it's probably almost halfway to Platoro. And it's getting to be evening time. And as the sun's going down, we're winding in and out of the mountain roads and everything. So we get probably about halfway. And my friends and I, we're just young, we're playing around. And we're playing this stupid game called Punch Rock. I don't know if you ever remember the game Punch Buggy, and you see a Volkswagen Beetle and you punch the crap out of your friend. Well, we're playing Punch Rock. And imagine that, a mountain in the Rocky Mountains where the mountains have a bunch of rocks. Well, that I can tell you that game lasted for about 15 minutes before we got tired of that game. But as we're driving along, right before we ended the game of Punch Rock, I was sitting in the passenger seat, my friend's driving, and I have two friends, we're in the back. And so we're coming along, and all of a sudden, like, where we pull up to is there's like a curve in the mountain where it's a blind curve. So as we come around this curve, it's a little woodsy. You got a little bit of a kind of a sloping hill here, and then you got a mountainside here that just kind of goes up like that. And not a lot of trees. Like I said, we're getting pretty close to the tree line, if not above the tree line. And it's not like super dark. It's like getting dark, but it's not dark. It's like I think like dusk. I think it's called dusk. Dusk, I think it is. Yeah, dusk. And all of a sudden, we come around this corner and we see this figure just dart across the road. It was a pretty good sized figure. And the friend that was driving and the two friends behind me, and we all saw this figure just dart across the road. And we were like, what was that? Type of thing. And so we're like, okay, we've been through this before. And no more than, the last summer with the Canyon Road. So we're like, all right, same thing. What did we all see at the same time type of thing? So at the same time, we all said what we saw. And what we saw was this good-sized black mass. It had to have been at least 7 to 8 foot, massive, just run right across the road, up the mountainside, and then just disappear. So we're like, once we all described the same thing, we went and did the exact same thing that we tried doing with the tree. We backed up, and we come back around the corner, see if maybe our lights would shine off of a rock or a tree or something and make the shadow. There again, nothing. We couldn't replicate the shadow running across the road. So we're like, okay, So now we're a little over halfway to Platoro. And so for the next 30, 40 minutes as we're driving, we're quiet. Our eyes are peeled. We're looking for anything that's going to be strange. For the next 30-40 minutes, we didn't see anything out of the ordinary. We just saw a bunch of dark mountainsides and, our lights shining on the road as we're driving through there. So we finally start talking again to each other, and this time we're starting to tell like scary stories. And due to the fact that I lived in the paranormal house, I was telling my friends about some of the stuff that I was experiencing in that house. And my friend that I was driving is the same friend that his dad owns the RV park up there in Platoro. So my friend that's driving and we're sitting there talking back and forth. We're sharing stories from, he has some crazy stuff that's happening at his house. I had some crazy stuff that's happening in my house. So we're talking about, just random, crazy, paranormal, scary stories for the rest of the drive to Platoro. So at this point, it's getting pretty late now, late Friday night. And we're just barely starting to pull into this little ghost town, Platoro. So we come down off the hill where you can actually see the town and everything. We get down to the cabin, unload the vehicle, turn in for the night. We end up waking up probably about noon the next day on Saturday morning, or Saturday afternoon, however you want to put that. So we ended up going over to the lodge, which is like kind of like a little store / restaurant / lodge, kind of all in one little building store. Pretty cool little place. And we ended up talking to the owner, and we were telling the owner what we had saw coming up the mountain, Friday afternoon or Friday evening, whatever it was. And the owner was like, wow, he's like, I had a couple of guides that came in through here a couple weeks prior to us getting up there. And he's like, yeah, they were up at Platoro Reservoir and showing some clients around and everything. And one of the clients said that he had looked off to the corner of the reservoir, saw like this big shape, and he thought it was like a moose or a bear or something. And what really caught this client's eye was that this brown shape on the other side of the reservoir stood up and darted off into the tree line. So us being teenagers and everything, we just kind of, laughed and shrugged it off and blew it off, and we didn't think nothing of it. So we go ahead and we get all of our supplies and we head back over to my friend's RV park cabin thing. And, we're going to hang out there for the evening because his dad's supposed to come down Sunday afternoon with the family. And so we're going to get all of our camping supplies ready, and, we're going to pull out for Sunday night and go down further into the canyon to go camping. So at this point, we got all of our camping supplies ready and it's all ready to go. So we jump in the car to go scout a spot to go camping. So we head down into the canyon and, we find this little offshoot that goes up into the canyon, off into like another canyon type of thing. So we go ahead and travel up this canyon for probably about a mile or so. And then we find this cool little spot that's kind of down off the way, It's kind of like there's like an old riverbed. It's kind of like a little bit of a meadow. And then maybe like 80 yards outside of that, you got like woods and stuff like that, and you got the road, and you got more of the mountainside up this way. So we're like, oh, that's going to be a cool spot for us to camp, Sunday and everything, while his family comes down. That way, because there wouldn't be enough room at the cabin. Well, there was enough room at the cabin, it's just we didn't want to share it with his little brothers and sisters and stuff like that. So we're like, we're teenagers, and they're, young. They're 8, 9, 10 area, so they're enough to annoy the crap out of his older brothers and whatnot. So we go ahead and we find the spot, and then we go ahead and head back to the cabin. So after we get done finding our spot and we're heading back to the cabin, it's probably about evening time. It's just starting to get dark. And so we go ahead and we head back to the cabin. We're going to play some pool and just kick it and just be rowdy young guys and everything. So once we get back to the cabin, we start doing our thing and everything. And it's probably, I don't know exactly what time it is, but it's later at night, probably about midnight, somewhere in that area, maybe a little bit earlier. We start hearing like tunk tunk, ting tunk tunk on the like side of the cabin type of thing. Well, it sounded like the side of the cabin. We weren't 100% sure, so we're like, oh, it's probably a weird storm, like it's hailing or something, So we're not thinking too much of it, and we hear tunk 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 tunk. So we look out the window, and it's not really, we don't see any hail or anything like that. So we're like, that's weird, So we just go back to playing pool and listening to music and drinking some beers and stuff like that. And the next thing as we're playing pool, the next thing we know is BAM on the side of the cabin. Something hit the side of the cabin so hard it shook the cabin. And that freaks us out. We're like, what the was that? And so we all stop what we're doing, we turn the music off real fast, and we go up to the door and we're like trying to look out the door window and everything. We can't see nothing. There's, it's really dark there because there's no street lights or anything like that. There's no other like houses or anything close by that put out a lot of light. The only light that we had was on the side of the cabin. And we couldn't really see nothing. So we opened the door, like barely open it up and look out. And we're like, well, we're not seeing nothing. So we open up the door. And we're kind of outside. And nothing seems out of the ordinary. And we're like looking around. And it's not hailing. It's just really weird. And we're trying to figure out how or what hit the side of the cabin or what made the cabin just shake all of a sudden. We're trying to figure it out. And off in the tree line of the canyon, we hear this really strange howl. It's not like of any animal that we had ever heard. It wasn't like a mountain lion. It wasn't like a wolf. It was just really strange. And we're like, okay, we're trying to figure out what animal it could be. And none of us knew what it was. So we're sitting there trying to figure it out and whatnot. So we end up going back into the cabin, shutting the door quickly, of course. And so we're sitting there just quiet, trying to listen while we're inside the cabin, see if anything's like going to hit the side of the cabin again, or if we hear these like little tinks hitting the cabin, or whatever that noise was that we heard before the howl. So we're sitting there for like 10-15 minutes, and it's just quiet. There's nothing going on. So we're like, okay, so let's go back to playing pool. We're just going to go back doing what we're doing. We're just going back to being rowdy teenagers, basically. So we go back to doing what we're doing, and the rest of the evening goes pretty smooth. I mean, we end up playing pool until late in the morning, or evening, or however it is, probably late in the morning. And so we finally end up crashing out. And we end up getting up relatively early because we know that we had to get up early Sunday morning to, start packing up our stuff, getting the cabin ready because my friend's dad was getting ready to come back down and bring the family, so we didn't want the cabin all trashed out and, having his dad just, yell at us for, turn off the cabin type of thing. So the next morning we wake up, it's Sunday morning, we go outside, and on the side of the cabin where we heard we heard the cabin shake, on that side of the cabin towards the cliff wall canyon, on this side of the canyon, we noticed this big rock about the size of a basketball. And so we look at the side of the cabin, and there's a dent in the side of the cabin from where that rock hit the cabin. And we're like, what in the world? We were just wondering, we were just dumbfounded because this rock looked out of place. There was like just a little tiny gravel all the way around the cabin and everything, and then just this one big rock that was like the size of a basketball. So we're like, what is going on here? So we're like, okay, well, let's head over to the, little lodge and everything, grab some last minute supplies and, go talk to the guy and see what's, see if maybe something strange happened last night. Maybe he heard it or he knows of something. So we kind of gather up a couple of quick little backpacks and everything, and we head over to the lodge. The lodge ain't very far. I mean, this is a small ghost town. You can walk from one end of it to the other end of it within like maybe 5-10 minutes. It's not very far. That we had brought our bicycles up in the back of the truck too, so we had options of our bicycles. So we head up over to the lodge. We go in and we start talking with the owner, and we're talking with him for about 15-20 minutes. And so we told the owner what happened to us, Saturday night and everything. And the owner is like, well, he's like, there's people that report that happening here from time to time. We're like, well, what was it? And he's like, don't know. He's like, Bigfoot maybe? And we're like, okay, and we just kind of blew it off and, started laughing, and we were talking with him a little bit longer and whatnot. So by this time, it's getting closer into the afternoon. It's like 3 or 4 o'clock, and my friend's dad and his mom are getting ready to come over, and they're probably like right, maybe not too long out. So we're going ahead and we're gathering up stuff. We know that they're going to be there shortly. So we're getting all the car loaded up. And as we're putting the last part of our camping supplies in the back of the truck, his parents come pulling in. So, we get to talking with the parents for a minute, and we told the parents that we're going to go down the canyon. And we found this little spot that we're going to camp down in there for the evening, and then we'll come back Monday morning, let them know what's going on, and then we're going to head off and then head back down to the house and everything. So, anyhow, after we get the truck packed up and we, talk to the parents, and the parents are like, all right, have fun, see you guys, be safe and all this other stuff. We jump in the vehicle and we head down to the new camping spot. So we get to the camping spot, we unpack the truck and we get our tent and everything set up and we get our firewood out there. We get all of our firewood and our fire pit and everything ready to go and whatnot. So by about this time, it's starting to get dark. We're getting the fire going. And us being, rowdy teenagers, we're out there with our music cranked and we're drinking beer and having fun. And so it's starting to get later in the evening, probably like 10, 11, stuff like that, We're still going, listening to music and having fun. And we start hearing like about 60 to 80 yards away from us, to the north, we start hearing like branches breaking. So we're like, okay, we turned down the music to try to hear what this is. We thought maybe, like a moose or something was getting ready to come into the camp. So we were wanting to, get ready enough that if we had to, we could jump in the vehicle with no problem. So we're hearing these little like sticks and stuff. We're hearing commotion off in the distance in front of us. And so we're like, okay, we're kind of chilling out, waiting to see what's going to happen, see if maybe, like a bear or a mountain lion or something's coming down, something's there type of thing. So that kind of chills out and we go on, we wait for another 5-10 minutes and nothing really happens. So we go back to doing what we're doing, having fun, being rowdy teenagers and whatnot. And probably about 30 minutes later, we hear some more commotion off in the distance in front of us up in the tree line again. But this time it sounded like something had like snapped a tree in half. We hear like this crashing sound. And the only way I could really describe it is like if like a tree was to fall over, but breaking at the same time type of thing. And at this point, we're like, okay, we're 100% sure that there's a bigger animal out there. So we go ahead and we pile into the truck. And we crack the windows down a little bit. And we're sitting there and we're waiting and waiting, to see if anything comes out of the tree line and whatnot. And it's quiet. Nothing's going on. So we're sitting there for the better part of 30-40 minutes. So we're like, okay, we think the coast is clear. So we're like, okay, let's go ahead and get out. We'll go back to, tending the fire and, we'll start to calm down a little bit now type of thing. Because it's getting pretty late. Temperature's starting to drop a little bit because it's getting early into the morning type of thing. Probably like 2-3 in the morning type of stuff. So it's pretty early and the temperature's dropping. And so we're like, okay, well, it's getting late. Our fire's starting to die down. We're going to get ahead and start getting ready to churn in to go to bed because nothing's happening anymore. It's been quiet. We've been just sitting there around the fire, drinking and talking and stuff like that. And just as we start getting ready to start to go to our tents and everything, off in the distance, about a quarter of a mile away from us, probably to the west, we hear, it's really strange because what it sounded like is it sounded like a guy screaming, but it was too loud to be a guy, and then it turns into like a howl. So it was like a scream to a howl. And it was loud. I mean, it was loud enough to echo through the canyon. And we all just basically we got scared. And we were like, okay, that's no animal that we have ever heard before. And so we're sitting there. And we could tell it's quite a ways off in the distance and everything. So we're sitting there just quiet. I mean, we're freaking. And so anyhow, maybe about 2-3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes later, closer to us in the front, off in the tree line, we hear another like really loud like scream howl, and due to the fact this one was so much closer to us, that scared us. We basically left all our camp spot, jumped in the truck, and this thing with this truck is because we still had to go back up this hill to get onto the main road to get back down to where we're going. But the problem with this truck that we were in is if we would climb the truck and the truck would start bouncing at all, it'd pop out of gear. So we started going up the hill, and all of a sudden the truck started bouncing and it pops out of gear. So my friend pushes in the clutch, hits the brake, I jam it back in the gear, and I'm sitting there holding this gear shift in the gear, and my friend guns it. We get back up to the top of the hill, go down the road, go barreling back into the cabin, and like I said, it's late in the night, so we go barreling into the cabin where his mom and his dad's at, and we like pretty much wake everybody up because they're wondering what in the world is going on, because we scared the bejeebers out of the parents and everything. So we got talking with my friend's dad for a little while, and we were telling his dad what was going on, and telling him what we had experienced the prior night, Saturday night before they got up there and stuff like that. So the dad's sitting there, trying to calm us down, and we're shaking up pretty good. And so finally, everything kind of calms down. We end up going to bed. So the next morning, early Monday morning, my friend's dad climbs in the truck with us so we could go back up and get our stuff, our tents and everything that we had at the spot, because we had just left everything. And so we get over there to the spot where we're at, and Dad's like, trying to figure out what's going on, and we're trying to figure out what's going on and all this other stuff. So we finally get the camp spot all picked up and put back in the truck, because we weren't going to go there without Dad, because he had some good heavy artillery with him. So we're like, we're going to take Dad with us and make sure we go get our stuff back and stuff like that. So that's where I'm going to leave you with this story. That was our experience in Platoro. But I'd like to remind you of this part. This is kind of the trippy part. Okay, so when we were coming up Friday evening, when we saw that big mass dart across the road, where our camp spot was at in Platoro, if you head north, that canyon road goes up and around the mountain and comes out to the north. So it'd be like right in front of us to the north, the road, which would be probably the better part of like maybe 15 miles north of us. So as that shadow ran across the road, it ran up the mountainside towards our camp spot. So we ended up camping either in that thing's territory, or it was still heading this way where we were camped. So that's the kicker of it. After everything was said and done, we didn't think about that until a few weeks later. We're like, that shadow of that big mass of something, that thing that we saw run across the road is heading to the same direction where we ended up camping on Sunday night, type of thing. So yeah, that's that story. That's the Platoro story. That's our Bigfoot, or my Bigfoot story for you. So like I said, I got some more stories on the paranormal house and everything. I'll tell those here soon. I got more stories about the house that has the poltergeist activity. I'll tell you more of those stories here soon. But anyhow, I wanted to say thank you guys. You guys are awesome. If you like this video, hit like. If you're new to my channel, hit subscribe. Until the next adventure.